Welcome into this latest edition of Making the Leap. This is an exciting one because our neighbors to the north of the Herzog Foundation, Iowans have figured it out. When it comes to the issue of school choice, I think probably one of the leading governors next to Governor DeSantis in Florida, Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas, the OG school choice governor out there in Arizona is Kim Reynolds. She does fantastic work, and one of the most active people in the entire state of Iowa when it comes to this issue and so many other issues that we care about on this show is Bob Vander Plaats, who runs the Family Leader. If you're not familiar with that, you're going to be after today's show. And Bob, we welcome you to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. What a pleasure.
We're so glad to have you here with us
We're neighbors. I should have been here way sooner.
Well, what do you think of the joint?
You know what? I love it. Just absolutely. I knew I was going to love it because I was showing pictures of it. Spencer was in Iowa.
Right.
And he was telling me about the Herzog Foundation and how I need to come there. I said, sure, I'll do it. And so it actually worked out today. I'm glad I'm here.
I know you're a humble guy. You're not going to brag, but here's just what's true about you. And I know this is true because I've covered politics for a long time in my other capacity as a
Don't
talk
read the
show
comment
host.
section.
Right. But, you know, Iowa First of the Nation caucus, and generally when you're talking about national politics and it going through Iowa, your name is synonymous with that activity. Fair?
Yeah, that is fair. And, you know, God's given us a great platform in the state of Iowa. We don't know why he's chosen Iowa to do that. I mean, there's a lot of states that'd like to do it. I often tell Iowans, think of yourself like Israel. All the people that had to go through Israel, this little tiny, spot in geography, they had to go through Israel. These people have to come through Iowa. And, yeah, we're the heartland, Iowa, Missouri. They have to come through us, right? And so it's a great opportunity to really vet, to get a chance to know them as people, take them to church, have them in your home, get to see behind the curtain, not just up on stage. And so it's been just an amazing opportunity and one that we do not take for granted at all.
So the Family Leader, I want to specifically talk about your organization because if people aren't familiar with it, how would you describe it to folks?
Well, our mission is to inspire the church, the institution of the church, to engage this institution of government, okay, for the advancement of God's kingdom and the strengthening of family. So if you take a look at that, the common sense is that God has three institutions: the church, family, and government. If you think of those in concentric circles, where those three concentric circles overlap, that's our crosshairs. And we believe a culture is blessed when God's church is engaged with God's government. And that is from politics to policy, but also partnership. So we lead with 4 little I's. People, if they go to our website, they'll see a little I in the word family. And the reason is just a real quick piece here. When there's a big I in family, there's a train wreck. If there's a big I in marriage, there's a train. When it's all about me, there's a train wreck, right? If it's all about a child, there's going to be a train wreck. So it's always a small I. Die to yourself, pick up your cross, follow Christ. The other thing, though, the small I's, is we say we want to inspire the church, small I. We want to impact elections with ministers of God. We want to influence righteous and just policy. And then we want to ignite partnership. Ignite partnership because every state, Missouri, just like Iowa, just like Florida, just like all 50 states, they're struggling with the breakdown of the family. And it's called Health and Human Services. And that budget's going through the roof. And you're not getting any results because it's all a Band-Aid approach. But now how do you bring the church along in partnership to meet the needs of foster care, to meet the needs with adoption, to meet the needs with the addiction stuff? Even COVID, the government saw all the macro data. The church saw Chris lost his job. Christine's in the ICU. We just buried. You see, so how do you partner those two? And that's the way God designed it. God didn't design the church and government to be one, separate, but the church would always have influence on government.
I really think that idea of just the partnership piece, because I do think it gets very combative in so many different venues. And so the idea of, instead of I'm fighting against, or I'm coming up, coming and speaking out against something, but coming alongside, is such a difference.
And what's interesting
mentality.
is when you have a leader like a Kim Reynolds, she gets it from the heart because she's a real minister of God. And so she gets, hey, I should open up my Department of Health and Human Services to the church. And all of a sudden, you have one church in Story County, Ames, Iowa, who takes care of 70% of all foster care kids in Story County.
Wow.
Wow.
One church. So she sees, and they're not looking for government funds, okay? Because then government gets the credit. We want God to get the credit. So she sees us. So she has really engaged our network, the Family Leaders Church Ambassador Network, into her institution of government that she's shepherd of right now, and saying, how do we break bondage? How do we set people free? How do we really make a difference? Well, now you're getting a state like Oregon, which is not a conservative bastion, calling Iowa, go and tell us what you guys are doing.
Meaning it is not about government endorsing church. It's about government allowing church to do what it does best, elevating it.
Exactly. I mean, this is Governor Bob Ray, who was a governor of Iowa for 14 years, back in the late 60s and 70s. He said to me one time, he said, Bob, I had 4 pastors come into me, like in the early 70s, he said, this is what the government needs to take on. And they gave him a laundry list. And he goes, I stopped him and I said, if we take all that on, what are you going to do? And today we've gone to government as our first resort versus our last resort. Usually it was, if there was a breakdown of the family, you went to extended family. If there wasn't extended family, you went to the community or the church. If there wasn't that, your last resort was government. Today it's our first resort, and it's a wrong resort to go to.
I know there are a lot of different conversations that we can have, but I just, out of my personal curiosity, how did you get into this arena? I'm sure it's a very long story, and I know we don't have, all the time, but where were some of those nudges? Where did that come from?
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, to be the guy who is really, I mean, I don't mean to embarrass you, but you really are, when you talk about the first in the nation caucus.
Well, it's like a trailblazer. I mean, that name is in my head.
Your name is synonymous with very impactful presidential politics, and the family leader is. And I mean, that's a responsibility in one, but how did that come to pass?
Well, it's a very circuitous route. I was a teacher. I was a coach. I was a high school principal in the public school system, okay, for 11 years. Darla and I have 4 boys. She argues she has 5. We have 4.
I get that.
But our I bet you do. Our third son, Lucas, was born with a very rare brain disorder. Left him significantly disabled. Wasn't supposed to live for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 years. Resuscitated 3 times by me, 5 life flight helicopter rides, could never walk, talk, and yet delivered such a powerful sermon in the 28 years of his life. God took him home the fall of 2021. Okay, huge impact in my life. But because of Lucas, I left Linus, the blanket, that public education, and I went into healthcare and human services, serving people with disabilities, president, CEO. It was in that experience where Governor Terry Branstad asked me to chair a governor's council on how to serve people with disabilities better economically, but also where we maximize their potential with dignity. Okay. So I did that, and it was in that experience where I thought, this state needs leadership from the outside, not the inside. And so I ran for governor, and that got me into this world of politics.
Okay.
And after I lost the governor's race, though, then the organization, Iowa Family Policy Center at the time, they came to me and said, would you be willing to take this on? And for a variety of reasons, I did, but we renamed it to the Family Leader. And that got me into this crosshairs. And right away, I knew a lot of these guys who were running for president, so they started calling me. And then we started vetting and building an organization in Iowa.
That's relatively new then.
It is.
I mean, that's 3 years.
Well, no. So I ran for governor in 2010.
Okay.
So I've been CEO now, president CEO
Okay.
for about 14
Your son.
years.
Okay.
Of,
I'm with you.
How about that run for governor? Talk about that for a minute, because when on this show we talk a lot about school reform. People talk about can we run for office and change the dynamic of our school board, and we can certainly debate that. We advocate that maybe people choose something a little different for their kids, we hope, which would be private education. But Are you a fan? I think you are, given what you've just described, that people would run for office, and even if it doesn't work out, is it a noble war to wage, running for your school board, running for governor?
Without question.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I didn't run for governor just once. I ran for governor 3 times.
Okay.
So in 2002, matter of fact, I left a appropriations hearing, and I gave the appropriations committee, filled up with legislators, power brokers, bureaucrats, a whole new model of how you could serve people with disabilities better at less cost. But it was a huge paradigm shift. And I left there and I got on my flip cell phone and I pulled out the antenna and I called my wife and she said, so how'd it go? And I said, the clue phone was ringing and nobody picked it up. I said, they don't get it.
Right.
She goes, so what are you going to do? I said, I think I'm going to run for governor.
Wow.
And she had 3 words for me, and they were not "I love you."
Yeah, I bet.
They were "Are you not?"
Are you kidding? I was going to say, are you kidding?
So I ran for
Yeah.
governor in 2002, lost the closest primary in Iowa history, and then in 2006, the eventual governor nominee, Jim Nussel, appointed me to be the lieutenant governor nominee. 2006 was a terrible year. And then because I backed Huckabee for president, and Huckabee won the Iowa caucuses, and Huckabee was intent on me becoming governor of Iowa, so I ran one more time in 10. And then Terry Branstad, they took out of retirement to run against me because marriage was the issue, and they knew I really believed it.
Okay.
And I beat Terry Branstad head to head, but if you propped up a third candidate, that would take numbers. So anyhow, God worked all things together for good. So I say I never lost. We just kept building and building and building. And now I get pastors who introduce me to speak, and they say, I never worked so hard for somebody to be governor of Iowa. And I'm so glad you lost.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Because they see what's happening with the family leader, not just in Iowa, but now in 19 other states, and the partnership that Governor Kim Reynolds and I have in serving the state of Iowa. It's been a blessing.
That's such a good, I think, perspective to keep, right? Because, I'm so glad you lost. Just
Well,
that
you can
idea.
become
because
very bitter.
Right?
You pour your heart and your soul and your money and your time, and it comes at great personal cost to run for something like that, and then to lose. Some people don't handle that very well, to be perfectly honest.
It is a test of your faith, there's no doubt. I remember after losing the 2010 primary to Governor Branstad, it was a beautiful morning. The next morning, Darla and I walked to a coffee shop, and Darla said to me, she goes, how you doing? And I said, I'm doing okay. I said, God's sovereign. I trust his sovereignty. And she goes, I got a couple questions. But now she's looking back going, no, I totally, and Governor Branstad and I are friends.
Sure.
And obviously Kim Reynolds is where she's supposed to be today. I firmly believe that. And even though Kim Reynolds will say from time to time, I wish I had your job.
Yeah.
But it all works
Well,
out.
and it allows you to be in places that you probably couldn't have been as governor in a
Exactly.
way to be as effective as you are. And I think that's something for people to remember when they're saying, can I even make a difference? Does my one, attempt here, does my one step here matter? It does. And that's
my big
huge.
thing is that if you feel called to do it, do it. If you don't feel called to do it, stay out of it.
Right.
Because then you're doing it for the wrong reasons
Right.
anyhow.
Let's talk about Kim Reynolds and school choice specifically, Bob, because this is something that Missouri has not figured out yet, much to my chagrin. I don't know why, but they just can't seem to figure it out. Kim Reynolds in your legislature in Iowa, I don't know what kind of intimate fight, you would have the details, but it just seemed like she just plowed that thing through with the help of some in the legislature and got it done. Universal school choice. It's still very rare. There's only 12 states in the country that have it. How'd she do it? How'd you do it up there?
Well, one is she had to believe it. Okay. Now, I believed it from day one. I was raised, tell people, I'm the Dutch guy that my parents didn't only threaten to send to a reform school, they did send to a reform school. So my whole education is Christian education. K-12 and then Northwestern College in Bethlehem, which would be Orange City, Iowa.
Okay.
But anyhow, so Northwestern College. But in Northwestern, I made a conscious decision I was going to serve in the public school system. I was going to be light into that culture. And I had an 11-year honeymoon in public education. And I remember on human growth and development having a discussion with our school board, okay, do you want to teach the best when it comes to sexual diseases or the second best? Because we teach the best with math and the best with science and hopefully the best with history. And they said, well, we want to teach the best. So then we got to go with abstinence. And the school board voted, we're going to teach abstinence at Sheldon High School.
Wow.
Okay. Well, today, when you see where public school is at, And Kim Reynolds sees where public school is at. She has a daughter who's a teacher in the public school system. Kim Reynolds would read out loud what garbage was in the public school system, and news outlets, news shows would censor what she was reading. So our kids can read it, but the public at large can't hear this. So she really believed in school choice. I believed in school choice. I believe in school choice because one is firm believer that this will make schools better, public schools better. Two is it allows parents to embrace Deuteronomy 6. It's your right to raise and nurture a child, not the government's right. So if you want a homeschool, Christian school, charter school, public school, that's your right as a parent to do that. And if we're funding this stuff, and our deal is, can we get public schools back to teaching and learning? They were never designed to raise our children. And if they were designed to raise our children, we have years of research to show we're bad at it. We need to get out of that job. Get back to academic excellence is what we're about. So Kim Reynolds believed it. Well, in 2022, the session of 2022, we pushed school choice really hard. Kim Reynolds had it in her vision for the state address, and we went after it. And we came up one vote short in the Iowa House. And Kim Reynolds got to us and said, we don't need more Republicans. We need more leaders who really believe what they say they believe. Mm-hmm. And so we got involved in 6 primaries that year, because it was 2022 was an election year. And we challenged 6 incumbents, one of them being the education chair, that we were told don't go after him because he's in leadership. You're not going to beat him, and it's going to be all about retribution.
These are Republicans.
This is going to be about payback. Some of our best friends took shots at us for going after the education chair. Sure. Okay? So we went into all 6 primaries on the ground, did an amazing ground effort, and Kim Reynolds came and gave us air support with her endorsements, and we took out all 6.
Wow.
And so it's when Governor Reynolds got involved in those primaries, she sent a message, and we gave her the ground apparatus to order to make that happen. But not only did we take out those 6, then in 2023, in the legislative session 2023, the first bill was school choice. And it was no longer a watered-down school choice. It was universal school choice. And they passed it like that.
So again, that really speaks to what you said about just running and losing that first time. If it had gone through, it would not look the way it looks now. And so I think there's something to be said when we talk about how Missouri can't get it right. I feel a little hopeful maybe that there's a reason right now they're not getting it right, that maybe it's because some other changes need to happen first. And I think that's really important.
Well, what I do know to that point, Christine, is courage begets courage.
Right.
So Ron DeSantis spent a lot of time in the state of Iowa, running for president. And great guy, great governor. And my guess is he's got another run in him down the road. It's just a tremendous leader, though. But he'd talk to me privately, and he'd say, you know what, when I'd watch what Governor Reynolds was doing in Iowa, I thought we need to do that in Florida. Mm-hmm. And Reynolds would go, what do you mean? When I saw what he was doing in Florida, I thought we need to do in Iowa. Mm-hmm. But then, I forget the date, but I was walking into a dinner, and Kim Reynolds was going to be with me, and it was a small group, and I get a call from a guy out of Texas, and it was just after the Texas primaries, because Governor Abbott went into those primaries to get school choice for Texas. Well, this donor gives me a call, and he's thanking me for giving the roadmap for Texas on how to do this.
Wow.
And I said to him, I'm glad you're thanking me. I said, but I'm going to have dinner with Kim Reynolds here in just a minute. And he just went off the charts on the phone going, would you thank her? Because there's no way Abbott does what Abbott does without Kim Reynolds showing how you do it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
courage begets courage. Mm-hmm. And good things are happening in the states because of that. D.C.'s a mess, but courage begets courage. And we're seeing it at states.
The governors are showing the way, aren't they?
They really are.
That's where I think, and each state being its own kind of laboratory, and federalism is on full display right now, and people are moving and voting with their feet. They're moving to states like Iowa and Florida in record numbers.
They really are. And the other thing that I think people are seeing is that the best government is the government that's closest to you, So they're focused now on their state government, but there's a whole renewed interest in school board elections,
Right.
county supervisors, city council.
Those local seats are,
You know, those
yeah.
make a difference. And quite frankly, you don't have to mobilize a lot of people to really make a difference in a local election. And that's what we're trying to do with them as well.
So, Bob, as people are considering school choice in Missouri, and there's been interesting kind of, well, I don't want to make too much of it, but it's real. There is some consternation amongst even some maybe more traditional families who are homeschoolers. They have misgivings. I think there's some kind of internecine battles even amongst Republicans about the best way forward. Did you hear that in Iowa, and how are you addressing that?
Well, you really did. And a lot of it is because Republicans tend to be from rural districts.
Yeah.
And rural districts are small school Iowa. And so it's the Friday night football lights. It's my wife's a cook at the high school, or my husband's the bus driver for kind of like what's going to happen to my public school system.
Major employer in small communities.
Exactly.
I mean, I was going to ask because I think that's huge. With the
And our
rural
big thing is
communities.
that is this about the adults who have jobs, or is this about the kids? And is it about families? Because if it's about the mission, so when I was high school principal, and every now and then, during a faculty meeting, there'd be a little bit of a venting session about, the bad kids. And I'd always say, boy, wouldn't school be great if it weren't for the kids? I mean, when it's all about us, right? But it's about the kids.
Yeah.
And so when they really embrace that, and I think the other message you need to hear is this will make your public schools better.
Right.
So, for example, school choice gets passed. I get called from a rural school board member, and he thanks me for helping pass school choice. But he says, now would you allow us the freedom at the local level for us to go to our local community and say, but we don't teach this stuff. We don't do this stuff. We're staying to academic excellence. So much of the stuff is forced down upon them. So you need to look at your state board of education and how those people get appointed. And I talked to Governor Reynolds about this too, because it's all union dominated. If you think the Supreme Court justices are bad with the judicial nominations and the Bar Association, you get the same thing with the State Board of Education. And when it's all union dominated, you get all the garbage going into all these schools that don't want it. So let the public schools rise up, change that State Board of Education, and let these public schools get back to their communities. And all of a sudden, there may not be a reason to say, I need to send it to Christian school or whatever the case might be. But I think what COVID did, COVID really exposed to parents the garbage that was being taught in these public schools. And so parents rose up and said, we've had enough. And so I think you're going to see a school choice blitz across the country. Missouri needs to get there, though.
Do you know the results so far? It's early, so maybe it's too early to tell, but do you know the numbers on parents taking advantage of universal school choice in Iowa? Is that happening yet, or is it still slow to grow? I know in Arkansas it's still slow to grow, they said.
is.
Oh, in Iowa, it's through the roof.
Is it?
Okay.
Yeah, and Christian schools, quite honestly, can't keep up with the demand right now. But I think what it is, though, it's empowering parents, again, to live it. It's your job to teach that child when they wake up in the morning, when they're in the way during the day, and when they go to bed at night, right? We have a model school district in inner city Des Moines called Joshua Christian Academy. These families would have no other choice but to go to public schools, but now they have a way to really break the cycle in a lot of ways and give these kids real freedom and real hope and let the parents be engaged again.
I think that is something that does have to happen, is people hearing stories like that, rather than just shut it down and say, I don't want the government involved in my money, which is, I think, where a lot of it comes from.
You bet.
But I think that's a piece showing them how it works in the rural districts, in the urban, in the inner city districts.
But also that it's not meaning that rural schools are folding up shop and
No, and that they're not just
closing.
down.
That's really not. It's not happening in Florida.
Right.
Other states, there is a symbiotic relationship there.
It's
They're
a
not,
great
it's not
conversation,
one or the other.
too, when we talk about Iowa, because you do have a huge rural population.
And quite frankly, in some ways we would reflect some of Missouri as well, that rural school stuff. I tell people, some of your schools have been shut down. You watch, some of these people might get creative on how they're going to do a charter school or a Christian school or a community school to take their school back, because if that money's flowing in and you don't have to live with all the other garbage that's being mandated on top of you, you can deliver a lot of education at a lot cheaper cost that benefits the kid.
Absolutely.
Well, Bob, we could talk all day. I know you don't have all day, but boy, the work you're doing up to the north, I mean, Iowa really has become a beacon, particularly in this space of school choice. I really believe, and I know you do too, this is the nucleus of the whole thing. If you can't wrest control of our kids' minds away from this public monopoly, I don't know that you're ever going to be able to save the future of the country, really. I mean that.
Yeah, Chris, you're really right. There's a lot of people that pray for revival in the country. And I tell people, this has been going on for a long time. People want revival in the country. 1979, when Ronald Reagan began his run for president, he said this country hungers and thirsts for a spiritual revival. That's 1979. Think of where we're at today in 2024. We don't even know what restroom to use, okay? This country hungers and thirsts for a spiritual revival. But if you're going to have revival in the country, you need to have revival in the family. You need to have moms and dads being moms and dads again. You need to have moms and dads being in charge of raising their children and not the government raising their children. And when that happens, the ripple effect is going to be out to communities and to states and to a country. And so I think this is really where it's at, and a big element, a key element of it is school choice. Empower the parents.
Bob Vander Plaats, great to see you in person, sir.
Thank you
Good
so
to
much.
see you too. Thank you so much for having me.
And that will do it for this week's edition of Making the Leap. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms. Maybe share this with somebody you think might enjoy it. And we will see you next time on Making the Leap.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. Please like and subscribe to the show and turn on notifications so that you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time on Making the Leap.